Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you are hearing some sort of distraction there in my opening. I don't know if it was from my side or it's from their side or someone's side. But I want to say welcome and good evening, and I want to thank you so much for joining me on Talking Sip. Today I had the privilege and the honor of actually going back into the studios and actually getting back into face-to-face confrontation, speaking to people. And this is after the whole COVID period, and it was really great because I think after the COVID time, or during the COVID time, we all stopped from going out, so we all virtual. And I decided, and I said, let me just get back out there as well. Well, I want to welcome you, those on Instagram, those on Facebook, and those on YouTube, especially on YouTube. The YouTube is going to be the key one. The Instagram is going to shut off at some point, and then we'll have a conversation. There's so much going on around the world politically, and if you notice, the topic which I coined was simply I wanted to go. I like to go against the flow, and one of the things that I was looking about Jamaica was there's so much things going on and so many. If you're on that side, you'll say this thing. If you're on the other side, you'll say this thing, and therefore, no one seems to be wanting to work together unless it appeases your party. And even in the UK of recent days, when Rishi Sunak actually announced for maternity leave, not maternity for mothers actually to get advance payment for their childcare because it was deemed that childcare was a key factor whereby the cost of childcare, it makes no sense for someone to go to work. So what the government is actually doing to stimulate people back into work is to pay. But guess what? Pay it in advance. And even in discussion with a couple of persons, they were saying, well, the conservatives have lost their way. Have lost their way. The ideology is different. They won't do that. And I'm saying, yeah, but the mothers are actually helped. And or the fathers, not just the mothers only, I don't want to be sexist. They are being helped and they're actually being stimulated to get back into work by the government, giving them a hands up. And when you look at that, it makes you wonder to a certain extent as to what is really politics about. Is it about helping people or just helping a party? Is it about power juxtaposing to a certain extent? I don't know. I'm just actually thinking about it. Let me just bring in Anil. Hey, Anil, how are you doing, buddy?
You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. I had you on mute for a little bit.
You muted me. I can't believe you muted me.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. As I said, I was today. I've been in the studio, sort of doing some filming, so I had to look at a trick, and so that's why I'm like this. So, in a way, um, I'm gonna try to, I'm sure you won't mind, because you always tend to go about 1 hour to 1.5 hour.
Yeah, about an hour.
I'm gonna see if I can go an hour and a half because tomorrow is Mother's Day, and my church got me to be their background singer as a backup singer. Imagine
No, I know. Imagine you being a backup singer.
that. A backup singer, So and I got to preserve the voice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or maybe I just do rapping.
There you go. There you go. Don't get kicked out of the church though.
Anyway, how you doing? I was over there.
It's good. Lots of different things going on. I think the major news story, people still talking about the banks,
Yes.
SVB. So
Yes.
that's a big topic on the economy. Has come into focus because I think the government has decided that they're going to make whole all the depositors of SVB. And you saw the different stuff going on with Credit Suisse and UBS. So, I think the government is trying to sort of put back sort of faith in the banking system. The interesting thing, if you think about it, right, we had this similar conversation what about a month and a half or 2 months ago, but it was writ large the SSL saga
Mm.
in Jamaica, and there's a lot of folks that's saying, this is, third world country, et cetera, and I had said, this sort of stuff happened all over the world, and
Mm.
here we are, the largest economy in the world, and we having issues with our banking sector. So, the takeaway from that is not just a Jamaican thing. It's something that affects and impact worldwide. So I think a lot of people were trying to make it very political statement to say, hey, it's caused by the government when these structural things happen, and then bank, for whatever reason, that they don't have the liquidity to cover their reserve,
Mm.
stuff happen. So it's a similar argument, was it's just more around faith and trust in financial institution. And I think the Prime Minister Nigel Clark had come out and say, hey, our institution are strong, which is
Strong.
what a government should do.
Mm.
And is the same thing that our government here is doing. We're
Actually, your secretary or lady there, she came out and said, just to let you know, we're strong as well, isn't it? That's what
exactly,
she
Janet
is.
Janet Yellen is
Yes.
yeah, right. So it just tells you is not something that just happen in the developed worlds and the developing countries. It do happen in Western countries such as the UK and the US. So that's pretty much what's taken up a lot of the airtime, folks discussing that.
Yeah, but there's something else over that side as well. Trump. Um, it's interesting. Trump has announced that I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday.
Who knows, right? I think he tweeted something. We'll see when Tuesday comes. Yeah, we just have to, we just have to be careful, just from a country and a perception perspective. So if there's a perception that one is weaponizing our processing system against, that could in itself cause downstream impact. So I think we have to be very careful, and I'm hoping that everyone who is involved are really thinking through the long term and the larger term impact to such a thing, right? So we'll see what happens, but I guess depending what side you're on, there's a lot of talks from one side, and there's a lot of wait and see, and I guess there's a lot of people that are hoping it happened. But for me, and we talked about this, we have to also look at what's in the best interest of the country.
Mm.
Obviously, there's nobody again above the law, but we also have to be mindful of the implication writ large, larger sort of contagion across the world.
Yes. Um, Before we go any further, what are you drinking, honey?
I'm doing some clear liquor today,
Clear liquor.
some vodka.
You can see me there. There I'm at.
I
We have
know
bottles.
you have quite a stash there.
Quite a
To
collection
stash.
there.
I know. You have the champagne.
Yes.
I guess you're
Yeah.
celebrating going back into the office. You have the Baileys. I guess you're following Leicester, and then you have the hydration for the water. So yeah, good set of combination.
Well. Yesterday was my wife's birthday, and tomorrow is going to be Mother's Day, and
Hmm.
then next week, Friday is going to be my birthday, and then next week Friday is going to be 8 years of the Sylbourne shows again.
There you go. So there's a lot to celebrate. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
how do I sound? I got this new mic, so I don't know how it is. It quite better than before, or just the same?
No, it sounds. I mean, it sounds clear.
Okay.
The last time, yeah. I mean, but you always have these high level stuff. Maybe it's so
Yeah,
high.
I just picked up the new Yeti. So I want to see how that
Okay,
works.
that's good. That's good. Awesome. The interesting thing about in the UK, just to talk about the UK, we had the budget, which was on over the few days ago by Jeremy Hunt
Hmm.
with the Prime Minister, and one of the interviewers was interviewing one of the MPs for the Labour Party
Mm-hmm.
on Channel 4 and said, "Is there anything that you like about the budget?" And she was saying, "Well, it's all Keir Starmer's budget, meaning the Labour Party budget." So that means to say, oppose the budget. And she was fumbling around and said, "Well, what's the sense of you being there then? What's the sense of having a Labour Party or opposition leader, But what struck me very powerfully was even last week when I coined the topic, which was,
Mm-hmm.
is it time for a government of national unity? We didn't even get around to that, but it drives around the same point there, whereby are you there to win an election, to be the political geezer, to be the ideological factor? Because really and truly, times have changed. And when I opened earlier by saying, if the government is helping
Mm-hmm.
mothers, fathers to get back into work by, instead of giving them money for their childcare after the fact, which some of them cannot have that initial
Mm-hmm.
cash, but what they're doing now, they're paying it in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a good thing? To help people get back on board. And then you start to want to say, well, the conservative is more a socialist party or something like that, or some of the policies.
Yeah.
But is it that they are listening? I'm not. I just use a conservative, but I'm also juxtaposing even with Jamaica, because what they're saying is that the recent budget by the prime minister in Jamaica was saying that, hey, things have moved on, and not moved on, sorry, but he has listened. A lot of people say he has listened, and he was really in tune with it. He had Radam in the platform. He had that girl that they break down the house in the in
Mm-hmm.
the what, the overflow place, and connecting. I mean, is that a bad thing? I don't
No,
know.
I think that the question is, what is the job of policymaker and politician? I should believe that the job of a politician and policymaker is to make policy or policies that are in the benefit of the people, right?
Yes.
Your job is to create an environment for private sector and business to thrive,
Yeah.
but in the same token is have a social system that is helping the folks who need it. And also in this case, and I don't know the details, but I would be surprised if anyone sort of does the analysis of that. You will say it's a good thing to provide, sort of, support for, families
Mm.
around childcare, because that's the largest expense. So that itself will have return on investment later on. And there's the same thing in Jamaica, for example. I just read a couple snippets because I think it's about a $1.02 trillion budget,
Yes.
and you sort of look at the spread, and I think one of the thing that I didn't know, what they call it now, minimum wage
Yeah. It
has
was
increased for the first time in 20 years, and
the
I do
13.
believe that's a
Yeah.
good thing. I saw where they have reduced some interest rate for NHT, which is also a good thing. So I think anything to help the citizens
Mm.
sort of mobility and help them to be able to take care of their family, I think that's a good thing, right? And I,
Yes.
I think over the last probably 40 years, Sylbourne, everything has become so political. And to me, it's around, how do I win back power? How do I stay elected? And you're not doing things on behalf of the citizens, then you're doing things for you to get elected, right?
Yes.
Um, and I think it's something, you know we should start hoping the next generation of leaders. And when I say that, Andrew Holness is what, 50 years old, so it's pretty
Mm.
young, right? Rishi Suna is also what, late 40s, almost 50.
Yes.
So you have a new generation that are thinking a little bit different, which is good. I don't think your political ideologies should drive how you put policy in place to take care of your citizens, because you're
Yeah.
elected not for one party are the supporters. You're elected to be prime minister in this
Oh,
case of
yes.
Jamaica and in the UK. So I do believe Sylbourne is, how do we get back to, sort of those leaders who are able to put, the people first, right?
Mm,
And I don't think you have a lot of politicians that think like that anymore.
yes. Putting people first. That is so crucial. Putting people first. Because when the recent polls in Jamaica had showed that the PNP has gained ground, and you have different comments now says PNP time now, and I speak to different persons. I speak to people who are socialists. I speak to persons who are labor right, and I spoke to different persons today, friends, and one of them was breaking it down to me to say that he just want the status quo to remain. And he was setting out his thing. You speak to another person and you think, are they in the same country?
Right.
Because they're coming from different angle. And I'm trying to say, where's that middle ground? Who
Yeah.
can find that middle ground to actually say, is because someone said, appear lied, I'm gonna mash up the country. And then another person said, boy, Sylbourne, that's not what's happening to me.
It all depends on where you sit, to your point.
Yes.
If you're the person who receive,
Mm,
a new title for a new piece of land, and the government is going to help you build a house, you're benefiting. And if you're the person who are benefited from the policy of the government, it's something that is benefiting you.
yes.
And I would think something like the minimum wage is not a one political party or the other political party impact. It's going to impact the entire country. So
Mm,
whichever political spectrum you follow, you're still going to benefit. If they're reducing interest rates on NHT loans, it's going to benefit everybody, right?
mm,
So the question becomes, what are the policies that are in place that's going to benefit everyone? And I think it'll be in the best interest
yes.
for, and we've talked about this, to have a strong
Mm,
opposition that lays out what is it that they would do differently, what in their opinion is going right, and what in their opinion are things that they will focus on to sort of get Jamaica moving in the direction that, if you read and you talk to folks, to your point, there are some people who believe Jamaica is moving in the right direction, and
yes.
there are some people who think we have a long way to go, right? But the question then becomes, is that politics or is that
Mm,
reality? And to your point, reality based on my situation itself. And I remember I was in Jamaica maybe last year, and I was talking to someone, a businessman, about the
mm,
crime. And he's like, O'Neill, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not something I get up and think about. Right.
yeah.
He said, I think about how to grow my business. I think about how to take care of my
Mm,
my staff and my workers. I think about where I put my investment. He's like, I don't get up and think about, what's going on. He's like, are there crime? Yes. But where I live and sit and work, it doesn't impact me. So I
yeah.
don't think about it. So those are some of the things I would think about.
Well, welcome, Angela Doreen. Thank you so much for joining. And hi, how are you? The It begs the question then, when you see the different sides, and unless we have, like yourself and myself, we can bypass the media houses, and we can speak to people on the ground that we
Mhm.
know are there. But if one looks at the media houses, and I find the media houses are somewhat driving or following the bloggers in a way with a sensationalism instead of actually dealing with proper journalism. And when I was watching Delano's Franklin funeral yesterday, is it Friday? Friday. Delano Franklin passed away. God bless his soul. And it was a beautiful funeral. And I saw PJ Patterson there, and he looking well. And then
Mhm.
I started to think, and we're talking about it would be so great that you have those council of elders, because you have seen where Bruce Golding came out and made some poignant statement the other day that um, persons from the JLP, I forget his name, was having a go at him when he was talking about the SSL. People like Pernell Charles, or they're on this particular program. And it'd be so great if these guys from opposing sides can come together and be like a council of elders, advisors, O'Neill, that can actually not even behind the background speaking to these guys or encourage or directing them, but speaking to the nation as well. But in a way, I guess the parties might say they're interfering, but in a
Mm.
way whereby they can strike somewhat of a balance, so people can actually hear something else. And I think these guys have a fundamental role to play. They may do in the background, but I believe it would be good if they could be up there on the front line in a somewhat extent.
No, I think you. So if you watch in the U.S. and I think somewhat in the U.K.,
Mm,
there are things that each current president will bring in former president to sort of focus on. If you remember, I think it was Haiti. Was it
yeah.
Haiti? When Haiti happened, they brought, I think, Bush and Clinton together,
Mm,
right, to sort of highlight the plight. I think that was during the earthquake that happened a couple of years ago,
yes.
right? So it's the same thing, in my opinion, would be beneficial to the Jamaican people and Jamaica itself,
Yeah.
where the current prime minister could say, we need a really focus on crime, for example. Let's use that as an
Yeah.
as part of, as we're talking about it, and get former Prime Minister Bruce Golden and former Prime Minister PJ Patterson to chair a working group on how do we, sort of tackle crime in a way that is beneficial to everybody. And I think bringing those two minds, because remember, former Prime Minister Patterson was Prime Minister for 18, 20 years,
Mm,
right? Um, Former Prime Minister Bruce Golden was what 6 to 8 years.
mm,
So that's, but when you look at a political career, you're looking at 60, 70 years worth of experience to be able to tackle a problem without having to, sort of thinking about you're going to get elected or not
yes.
elected, right?
Exactly. That's the whole point. Thinking about getting elected, because as we can pick up, is that most persons or politicians now, they speak with the foresight of 5 years, or they're
Exactly.
thinking about being elected, and that's their driving factor. But as you rightly say, a Bruce Golding, a PJ Patterson, they have nothing to prove. I even saw
Yeah.
Omar Davis. I even saw Omar Davis at the
Yeah.
funeral.
It's like
These
these
guys.
guys, exactly. These guys have nothing to prove. So put
Yeah.
them on things that they're going to leave a legacy on. Let them go work together
Mm,
to fix issues that the prime minister, the opposition leader are not no too keen to work together on, right? So I think we just have to figure out how to continue what I call the snowball effect,
yeah.
Sylbourne. And what I mean by that, there's little pieces of the puzzle stitched together that is going to get Jamaica moving forward, right?
Yeah.
And I do believe, obviously it's a 70% services industry. Tourism is one of the biggest sector. You have mining, bauxite, but I do believe, and I've said this on this forum before,
Yeah.
technology should be the heart of the next sort of growth in Jamaica. I saw the new president of Nigeria came out and said they're going to put a fund together to provide capital investment
Mm,
for technology folks that's going to help transform their country. And I do believe such a fund should be required in Jamaica. I know we have the microfinance stuff in Jamaica, but
yes.
how do you focus on a technology sector that is going to help transform, whether it's farming, whether it's manufacturing, right? And provide the skill set. And I do believe Jamaica could do it, but it goes back to what we are talking about. You don't really have an effective sort of opposition that is willing to work on things that is going to uplift
Mm.
the Jamaican people. I saw the different slogans. Time come, I think is the different piece. But what is the policy that you're putting in place, other than saying time come, right? How are you going to solve
Mm.
the how are you going to solve for the crime element, right? How are you going to continue investing in infrastructure? And then what are you going to do differently? So I do believe some of those things are important to burn in terms of the continue focus on, how do we help our people? The teachers got more money recently in Jamaica, which is a good thing. I'm
Mm.
sure the law enforcement entities will do the same thing. So now we're moving, because when you look at the last 4 years in Jamaica, COVID was impacted the economy, but there's a growth, right? I go to Jamaica, and I was there again probably about a week ago, I think. The skyline in Kingston is changing,
Mm.
right? The question is that a good thing? Of course, right? You see infrastructure, meaning apartment complexes going up all over the place, right? Someone is buying those things, right? Um, and we have to figure that piece out.
Do
Uh,
you do you think then that the present regime, with the positive thing which are happening and the skylines and the new developments, don't want the next or the opposition to benefit or to reap such rewards, if anything, and that's why maybe there's that lack of cohesive support to certain things.
there's always that case, Sylbourne, where you're pointing out what's bad, right? You're pointing out everything that's bad with the current administration that is leading the country, right?
Mm.
And if you flip it, it's going to be the same thing, But to your point, if you go back and you look at the infrastructure, the road development, right? Remember that started on a PM, and the
Of course.
current government has continued it, right? To their credit, they've continued it, right? So it's, to me, using that simple example around, we need an infrastructure from a road modernization perspective. It
Mm.
started on the one administration, and you continue it to that. You continue pushing forward because it benefits the people. And I see someone talk about corruption.
Yes,
You
I
know,
just.
corruption is, right. Yes, you have corruption, and you have to address it in a meaningful way. But in my opinion, is around governance, right? I think Jamaica is sixth in this region in terms of ease of doing business. And on the corruption index, I think I forgot where they are. Is Jamaica perfect? No, it's not. Right. But the question becomes,
Right.
we always point out, hey, there's corruption, right? But what is our solution to fix it? Right. I saw something the prime minister said recently when he was in the news about some incident. And I thought he did a masterful job that says, look, you know, he addressed it, and I don't know the details, but he then say, how do we work together to put a proper governance system in place to ensure that we're not having these things and talk about in the future? So I think this is where, we the people, how are you making suggestions? When you see corruption, how do we ensure the institutions are being strengthened, right?
Mm.
Because the notion that you have zero corruption, it's just not happening. Not because you don't want zero, it's just that it's just human nature, and it happens across the world. Jamaica is one country, and hopefully, you know as Joseph pointed out, how do we address it, right? I think proper governance in place should help. I think transparency can help. And
Sorry.
then, how are the citizens sort of, forcing policymaker to make these changes?
What I've done, I've looked for the corruption index, and uh, Jamaica is 70. Is that what you're talking about?
I think there's 70 out of 200 countries.
Yeah.
Not that they're great,
Yeah.
200, but there's still a lot Jamaica need to do in terms of governance. But I would, if you look at the trend over the last 20 years, I would say Jamaica is coming down on the index,
Right.
where I think at one point they were 133,
Mm.
right? So they're making progress. Are you going to get progress overnight?
Yes.
Sure. But how can we put the governance in place and put in place and ensure that our institutions are not, being corrupted or mismanaged, right? How do we do that? And then,
When,
the other thing I would say, I would encourage young people to get involved, right?
when we hear about corruption, when we hear my some sounding like some low battery somewhere, I'm trying to fix that. When we hear about corruption, um, and corruption is not only to Jamaica, but as Joseph said a while ago, the endemic corruption and mismanagement of the state. Listen to those words: endemic corruption and mis. I'm not having a go at Joseph, but these are words which I use a lot. Endemic corruption and mismanagement of the state. Would we say Jamaica is mismanaged? Can one say Jamaica is a mismanaged state, or it is managed or managed in a way according to a purpose by those who have the vision for Jamaica, but not in the way that everyone sees management? That's yeah.
I would say, again, goes back to what we are talking about. It depends on your perspective and what you see, right?
Yeah.
We just talked about, I think Jamaica are 60 or 70 out of 180 country or 200 country, right? Um, when we say mismanagement of institution, does that mean? Yes, the government has privatized certain institutions, right? They've privatized the Jamaica Public Services. They've privatized the bauxite companies. They've privatized, you name it. The question, which I don't know the answer, Sylbourne, is that when we say mismanagement of institution, what does that mean? Does that mean that the institutions in Jamaica are not functioning the way they should, or there are things there that are impacting policy and impacting the people? So I think we threw out those words. I've heard that for the last 40 years that Jamaica has been mismanaged, right? And
Yes.
the interesting thing, depending on where you are on the political spectrum, you'll throw stone at one or the other. My thing is always, how do we fix it? If we see Jamaica used to be 133 on the index, they're what, 70 now. That means they've come down 50 points. The question becomes, how do they get to top 10, right? And
But
what
that's
are
all
the
things.
governance and
Yeah.
things that could be put in place? But to me, that's progress. Coming from 133 to 70, to me, that's progress. Is that perfect? No.
Mm. I think one has got to really and I strongly believe that's why I typed the topic. Positive movements, Jamaica going forward. Positive movements, Jamaica going forward. I just grabbed that out of the air because all I'm seeing is, depending on which side you are, and the uh, election is in the air. There's a talk about there could be a general election being called very soon, and that general election comprises of the local government election at the same time, in a way to sort of keep it going, because they are saying that the local government election would have given a bloody nose to the prime minister or to the government. But I still think that a local government election, whether it gives a bloody nose or what, I think it is good because it gives you a full indication of where you are at, and then you can listen. I think what is missing, Anil, and I think what is missing, ladies and gentlemen, is a general interest in the running of the nation in the best interest of the people. In childcare law, which I'm a lawyer, we look out for what is the best interest of that child. We don't talk about the parents sometimes. The parents could be the best interest of the child, if anything, if the parents go back to that. But what is in the best interest of the child? What is in the best interest of Jamaica? Yeah.
Yeah. And the interesting, there's a lot of positive thing coming out of Jamaica, right? You had what's his name? Roden broke the 800-meter indoor records, right? in the U.S. There's another Jamaican that broke another field record in, I think,
Mm.
is a triple jump. So there's a lot of positive things coming out of there. So, you know, I think we need to figure out how to highlight those positive things.
Mm.
And are there things that we could do differently? Of course, there are things that Jamaica could do differently, or Jamaican policymaker could do differently. But Rome was not built over there. You and I have
Yeah.
talked about this, right?
Yeah.
Uh, if you look at the last 30 years of governance, I believe, or a little bit more, I believe about 20 years out of that
Yeah.
was governed by the other party. And the other party, I think, what's his name? Bruce Golden was in there for about 4 years. Then
I
Andrew
think,
was in there.
I think they do those things sort of cut his time, isn't it?
Yeah, but
Mm.
he left because I think that's something he always wanted to do, because
Yeah.
he's if you just listen to him, he's always one that, hey, I'm gonna do my bit, and when I think I have nothing else to give, I'm gonna turn it over to the next generation, and I think
Yes.
that's what he did. And then Andrew came, so you could say the current administration have had a go at it for the last 8-9 years.
Mm.
Um, the question becomes, are they doing a good job for the people? One could argue that there are things that are actually working for Jamaica. We
Mm.
still, crime issue still, you're trying to plague us there, and which
Exactly.
they need to get a handle on. But we also had 3 years worth of pandemic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is unprecedented. So I do believe those things are something, Sylbourne, that you could highlight to say, coming out of the pandemic and having I think it was a 2.9 or 3.9%
Yeah.
growth last year was a good thing, right? Because the entire world was shut down, and so was Jamaica. And I do believe they did a really good job at managing the pandemic and getting us out of it. So now the question of how you build on top of that. When you go back to election piece,
Yes.
yeah, we talked about it last time that, yes, it's a good thing to have elections so you could have soundings from the people.
Yes.
But we talked about this before. Hardly anybody show up, right? So the last one was what, 30%.
So
So
it's,
if you're
yeah.
at 30%, so Jamaica is what, 2.9 million. There's
Yeah.
about 1.5 million who are off working age. So just say you have 1.5 million people to vote, and out of that you only have 30% that voted. It just means that 70%, for whatever reason, has decided is that
In the
they're not
matter
voting for either side.
and therefore what drives are the persons who are, let's, I wouldn't say die hard, the voters, those that who actually came out to vote.
The
And then,
ideologue.
I'm sorry.
You could call it. It's that you say the person who are ideologues, meaning,
Mm.
that's not a pejorative word. It's like, I have family member that they're like, I will never vote for JLP
No matter
because
what, even
no matter
even
what, my father, and then I have, vice versa, where they'll never vote because my mother was this, my grandfather was this. So to
even
that
though
effect,
even though they are being helped, even though they can see some positive things.
yeah, it doesn't matter. It just like, nope, I could never
Mm.
vote for that person because my grandfather, my grandmother, my
Yeah.
mother, right? So it's like a generational. So those are the folks that will come out,
Yeah.
right? But I do believe we should start getting more sort of younger representation. And I always say I'm a big fan of Damian Crawford. I'm a really big fan of Damian Crawford.
Yes.
Just the way he thinks. And yeah, he was willing to lose an election on principle. He was willing
Mm.
to do things that his constituency didn't want, but in his
Mm.
mind, in his thinking, that was the best thing for his constituency. Now, in retrospect, he could have done it a little bit different, but I'm a big fan of Damian Crawford and the way he
Yes.
thinks about, how he wants to make changes, for our people. And, I am just a big fan, and I wish I'll see more of people like him that are coming out and putting their point of view out there.
Do you think the likes of Damian Crawford sometimes that with the right ideas, the right thinking, but maybe off the gun is fired a bit too quick, based on Jamaica to a certain extent, because many people say, a guy was cussing the other day by saying, "There you go, you rather the 5,000 for election than the two goat that could have feed the family for a long
Yeah,
time," or because two goats actually has great positive thing, because the two goats, especially if it's a man, well, a female or a male goat, you can actually have more children, more kiddies, or more
right. More
whatever you
investment.
call it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Damien has really good intention.
Yeah.
I do believe, and I don't know him, and you know him, right? I think if you talk with Damien, Damien would
Mm.
say, in retrospect, I might have been a little bit more too quick on the implementation of it. I should have done it phase by phase,
Phases. Yeah.
right? Where you sort of show, right? You tell the story of what you're trying to do, and you create that
Mm.
snowball where you pick an area. It could be education, or it could be agriculture improvement, or it could be something else.
Mm.
You pick that, and then you show the fruit of it, and all of a sudden people will come on your side.
Yes.
And he's big focus on education, which is a good
Mm.
place to focus on,
Mm.
because I
Mm.
think in his mind he's saying, if I focus on building the minds of the next generation, right, that is how I'm going to teach a fisherman how to fish and
On the
not give
fish.
that fisherman a
Yeah.
fish, right?
Yeah.
And I think we need more of the likes of Damon Crawford on either side. To me, who's the Damon Crawford, right, on the other side, right? Not just one, not just two, but who are these Damon Crawfords in each of the parishes and the constituencies that will help
Mm.
germinate those
Yes.
ideas? And I think if I were Damien Crawford, is that how do you create the next generation of thinkers and philosophers
Mm.
that have that
Mm.
mindset of how do you teach a man to fish rather than give him a fish?
Yes. Well, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and those on Instagram and those on Facebook and those on YouTube, the topic tonight is positive movements, Jamaica going forward. O'Neill and I is having a chat, and I'll let you know now. It's not going to be. We're just going to go over an hour. Just talking about this. It's been a long day for both of us, and especially myself being filming today. But I think, O'Neill, that and ladies and gentlemen, you can come in as well. It's like politics worldwide, it's not just Jamaica only, need to step up with a level of maturity, because what we are seeing is that those who are normal the left and those who are normal the right, they are doing things which doesn't fit in the thinking of what it was before, because people are actually pushing the right stakeholders, the right lobbies, the right persons are pushing to get government. Like in the UK, what we are seeing is whereby the conservative, many are saying, is operating like a socialist party, you know, and some of the things that Sturma is doing, I find it strange. But it's like the people are actually, well, for the UK, the people are actually pushing on. Well, France is a bit different, because France is saying, hey, we don't want the Macron to push the age of retirement up to 64. Let's demonstrate. I'm going to watch how long the French will do this. But for Macron went not through the proper channel. He evoked his powers or whatever like that to get this thing to be pushed. Is it time for a high level of maturity in politics, in leadership? And even in Jamaica, I wish for the day that there could be a major conference, whether PNP or JLP, and the leadership have no colors of the same color.
Mhm. Uh, I, I think we've talked about this, right? And
Yes.
I've started to think deeply about it, right? And it goes back to institutions, right? And we talk about processes, we talk about governance,
Mm,
but at the art of everything is people, right?
yes.
If you go into any one of the ministries, whether it's in the US, UK, there's
Yes.
people in the background. There's no process without people. There's there's no governance. But I do believe that the challenges that
Yes.
Europe is going through is a telltale sign that all of us should pay attention to. And
Yes.
what I mean by that, there's two sides to the ledger, right? In any government, there is the expense side and there's the revenue side, right?
Yes.
And in the case of France, right, one could argue, and we're not arguing here whether it's right or wrong. I think we don't have the data that Macron is using. But based on what I've read, what he's saying is that, look, if we don't make structural changes to this process, we won't have any money for anybody, right?
Mm.
And the question becomes, is he going out about it the right way in bringing people on his side? That's a different debate. But I do believe we have the tendency that we're unwilling to look at institutions or
Yes.
processes that were created 50, 60 years ago and say, you know what, when we created those programs, there's certain assumptions that we had back then. Those assumptions are changing. So if you
Mm.
take sort of the age of pension, right? If you go back, not only in the US, but in the UK, right? When the age was as such, people were living until, 60, 65,
Yes.
right? You now have people who are retired at 60 or 55 and they live until they're 102,
Mm.
103, right? So the longevity is going up. So and then what you have, the number of people who are working to support our senior citizens are reducing. I think in the US they said back in the 80s it was for every retiree you had 5 people working. Now it's probably
Mm.
1.25. In the UK, I'm not sure what it is. So these are structural issues. And I could tell you, I have a personal, because I have my daughter in Italy, and
Yeah.
I've seen where someone was retired years ago, got their pension cut, right? Because the government is trying to figure out how to make it work. And I think we have to figure out, how the whole thing works. But
Yes.
it's one of those things, Sylbourne, where people are not willing to sit on either side and come up with things that are in the best interest of um,
Nation.
the people.
Yes. M- Person on Instagram, Maxi says, and I post it. I just type it here as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Enough of childish ideologies. Someone from Instagram. Enough of childish ideologies. You know,
So,
and
so, so I think this person is saying, whoever it is,
yeah.
that sitting across and having discussion on how you solve problems is childish, right?
No, no. I think what the person is actually saying, if I'm not mistaken, been following the comments, is that sitting sitting down and talking is the best way forward because the ideologies,
Oh, okay, I got you,
yeah,
got
the
you.
ideologies are a bit very childish
Yes.
now because
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
got you. I thought he was saying
Yeah,
she, yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
no, she, he or she, I don't know who.
Mm,
They're right. The problem is that, there's these, I don't know, ideologies is the right word. There's these perspective,
yes,
and everyone is so beholden to their, and maybe philosophy, ideology is the thing that nobody is willing to give, right?
yes,
And we're seeing it where, I was watching um, this debate, and this person is talking some facts and quoting the research,
yes,
and the other party, what the other party did was really interesting, Sylbourne. The other party start attacking him personally,
mm,
and the person who was debate, you could see, and the moderator was like, wow. And the person said, well, if your answer to my argument is personally attacking me,
yes,
it just tells you that we as a society has evolved where we can't have a debate. And
yes.
I admit that, look, the facts that I have today is totally wrong, and I need, because Silburn just gave me some new facts. Or guess
Mm,
what, their ideologies that are 50, 60 years old that might, during that time maybe was okay.
mm,
But in today, it's a different environment, right? We're using technology more so than we are. You know, we've seen automation coming in more forceful than anything else. You know, if folks are paying attention, for example, the whole generative AI and chat GPT, right?
Mm,
That is going to change how we interact. That is going to change education, right? So all these things are
mm.
happening at a speed so fast that our policymakers are not sitting back, Sylbourne, and say, wow, how do we prepare for that? We're still beholden to these ideas and ideologies that are way back when, and we are not evolved as a society.
And that's a fundamental point which you flagged up there, because the world is, like I always say, positive movement in Jamaica going forward. The world is actually moving a particular way. And I was listening to the bankers talking today about the banks shutting down, and one of them was saying, "I bet you," and they're making a comparison with Northern Rock to say you're going to have a sort of ripple effect that may come in through with the bankers as well. And I long for the time whereby the different government, the structures, can really sit down and actually work together. But then someone will say, well, it's against the grain of what governance is. You need an
Right.
opposition and you need government. When the national unity government came in, national unity government came in when there was some sort of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln period, um, there were always crises. But do you need crisis for something of unity? You don't need crisis, do you?
No, you don't.
You
Yeah,
don't need crisis.
you know, to the person who posts, right, it's sort of what you have, where you have these
Mm,
point of view and philosophies, and then you have to govern, right? You have to come together to govern in
yes.
the interests of the people, and somehow you have to meet in the middle and say, you know what, I'm willing to set that aside and set that aside, because we could collectively now put policies together in the interest of the people, right? The problem you're having, Sylbourne, is that everyone is so beholden to their ideology and they're not willing to shift. I remember, you know, if you go back to sort of the Congress, Ted Kennedy, they call him the last lion of the Senate, right? You have John McCain, they call him the Maverick. These are people who form bonds and did things that are in the best interest, but they were
Yeah.
politically different in terms of how they thinking. But they realize that, you know, you're going to have a stalemate if I hold to my position, you hold to your position. So I think we need that sort of thinking, and I hopefully we will see the next generation. And I tell you something, you know, the one person I think um, could pull this off, but she has to reimagine how she thinks about governance and policy. And you're gonna be surprised by who I would say.
I think I might.
Yeah, yeah. AOC, for example, heart is in the right place, but if she could take that, you know,
Momentum.
everything pent up and
Mm,
figure out how to, you know, do things for the people, she could have such a great platform, um, in terms of learning the issues. Because the one thing she's good at is drumming up support for different things,
yes.
right? But I think if she could channel that energy into, say, how do I force this generation, meaning, because I think she's in her early 30s, right?
Yes.
One of the youngest member of Congress. If I bring this coalition of younger generation, to start having discussion around how we move policy forward, she could be really, really good, right? But she has to move away, as the person from Instagram said, you have to move away from that very ideological thinking and be willing to become a really good legislator and doing
Mm,
policies that are in the interest of the people. Because the thing that I sort of, it's not a comparison, but if you look at Reagan and how Reagan used the power of storytelling
Mm,
to bring people from one side to the other, right? And we're not debating whether we're fair or far. It's just the fact that he was so good as a storyteller, even though he had a Democrat Senate and a Democrat Congress, he was able
yes.
to use, and he went to the people because he connects with the people in a way. And I think on the other side, I see AOC in terms of her connection with the next generation. I
Mm,
think if she could use the current platform to mobilize, I think that's where you could see some magic happen in terms
yeah.
of moving the country in a direction that setting the institutions
Yeah.
that are going to be important for
And,
us to move forward.
and moving the next generation is crucial. We see Pelosi was moved on. I've been having my eyes on the spokeslady for Trump, for Biden, the black lady there.
Jean
Forget what her
Pierre,
name. Yeah, there's something about her, and maybe she may come in the fair another time, because just like Kaylee, Kaylee's Trump in her own
hmm
space regarding, and she I admire Kaylee as well, and there's this new breed of vibrancy, especially in the States, which is happening there with the AOC, with the Kylie, with even the same speaker, the lady who is the
Jean Pierre.
Jane Pierre. She's Haiti or Haitian background or something like that. I
I
don't know.
don't.
Or French. Or French.
I don't
Yeah.
know what's her. I'll find out and tell
Yeah.
you.
But I believe that there's a new awakening, and I believe very strongly. That's why we were talking about young people last week, and I think discussion with young people, it sort of went AWOL to a certain extent, because I do believe that one cannot generalize young people to a certain extent, because lots of young people and guys that I know are young, you know, they're actually progressing another way to a high level than the typical, and it all depends on where you're seeing, on who you're looking at.
Yeah.
And I've always said this all a while, even when they talk about like black boys in the UK, always say to people all the while, always remember, it's a minority that gets the noise, not the majority. And it
hmm
is just like in politics as well. That is why Brexit happened. Always be aware of the silent majority, which just
Correct.
waits for that moment of time, and they will just go into that polling booth. I was saying to my my I had some issues with one of my thing, and my counselors for the area, they are Labour and I'm conservative,
Uh-huh.
but we get along so well. And when we have street parties or whatever, we get along so well. And he calls me, he called me the president, and he's a governor, and I said, well, Mark, Mark, I vote for you. I said, oh, I'm just kidding. And I said, Mark, you never know what happens behind that polling booth.
Exactly.
You never know.
You never know. Right. That's where you say the silent majority, but
The silent
it,
majority there is
it's.
powerful.
But I am an optimist. I do talk to a lot of young people, and I have my sons are at the age. My oldest son,
Mhm.
and he and I had a pretty vibrant conversation recently, and the way he's thinking about things, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize, because the one thing he said to me, he's like, Dad, all of these people are so old. Is like he's like, Dad, when is it that folks like myself and others are gonna have a voice, right? And I think if you sort of sense that and say he's thinking that, there's a lot of young people that is that age that's saying, hold on, I'm seeing how this thing work. I don't want to do that, right? We have to change that. And I think that's where I do have the optimism that our next generation of young people is going to be better than we are today, because they've seen how we operate and they're
Yes,
like, nope, we're not going to do that.
yes, yes. That is very powerful, and they are very savvy. They are very in tune. Oh yes, they use the social media, but they get
Yes.
information which is coming to their face and to their space. You just need to encourage them to read a lot more, and some of them are doing it as well. But then that is our responsibility again.
Yeah.
That is where we have abdicated our responsibility with our children. You know, uh, I did a video the other day which was saying, if you don't have a plan, someone will have a plan for you. If you don't have an agenda, someone will have an agenda for you. If you don't have a purpose, someone will make sure their purpose is with you. And if
Yeah.
you don't know, somebody will know for you. And I used it as an example because my daughter was saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't. I said, stop saying I don't know. You need to know. So therefore, what I'm talking about right there is that
Yeah.
the training starts from early. Just like who I'm speaking here, you got to give it also to your children as well. And that's our responsibility to teach our children and to groom our children. When I say groom our children, to train them in the right way as well. We got a responsibility.
Yeah. I think access to information
Yeah.
is at your fingertip, right? You and I, yeah,
Mm.
you went to York Castle High School. I went to Edwin Allen, right?
The
If we
best
had
school
to
in the
do
world. Yeah.
research, around, we had to go to the library, right? We
Yes.
didn't.
We had to go library.
There was no computers. You go
Absolutely.
library, everything was written. We didn't have tablets. We didn't have anything like that.
Nothing on it. Nothing.
But I would say reading and be able to think critically, I think those are important skill sets.
Mm.
I was just reading a book, the author Lehman and Stanley, and it says why greatness cannot be planned.
Mm.
And the premise of the book is that, if you sort of have these stepping stones that going across this lake, you're
Mm.
following those stones.
Yes.
And halfway through, there's fogs and you no longer see the stones that take you to the next side. What are you going to do?
Yes.
There's a couple choices you have right there. There are certain people that will turn back and go back to the other side. There are certain people that will trust in their instinct and
Yes.
create their own path and go to greatness.
Mm.
And it's just like the other day, I hike, as you know, and there's a particular road that you walk and you hike, and I don't know what was in my head. I just decided to just veer off and just go through a different path, and I came up on this really beautiful lake that I didn't know was there before. So what that tells you is that if we give our kids the right sort of um, training around how to solve and be critical thinking
Yes.
and assume positive intent, they're going to be much better than we are, right? And we
Mm.
just have to trust that they will make the right set of decision, and you're helping guiding them. And I've seen it where Sylbourne, where people will say, and it's sort of touch back, and here people's like, you have to be a doctor, and they tell their kids that. And I always say, I said, let them figure it out. If they want to be a
Mm.
doctor, they'll be a doctor, because here's what will happen: they will go down a particular path that you want them
Yeah.
to. And once they get to a certain age, they're like, I'm going to do whatever I want. And you've lost them. But if you sort of guide them, and sometimes they're going to make mistakes. And it's the same thing we have to figure out in the policy making agenda, right? How do we make policies, but make it in such a way that when we know the output is not what we expected,
Yeah.
we change, right? And that's where I think the politics come into place as everything sort of come back in circle here,
Yeah.
Sylbourne, where we are so afraid as not we, but politicians are so afraid to go back and say they were wrong, because the opposition is gonna see, right? See what
Mm.
happened, and we just are forced to then start from scratch or just leave the law in place that
Mm.
impact a whole ton of people. And I think that's where you see Macron in France. He's having the whole protest, as you said. Is he going to roll it back, or
Mm.
he's going to hold his ground? And I think I saw something that says, the opposition is coming up with a no confidence vote against him. But
Yeah.
again, let's
Because.
go back. Is it the right policy?
Mm.
I don't know the answer, but is it the right policy? Because
That
if
that's
if it
that's the key thing. Is it the right policy? Whether it was done the wrong way, but is it the right thing? Is that what you're
e- e-
saying?
exactly, is it the
Yeah.
right policy for the people, and what is the implication if you don't do it? And I think this is where I don't think he was really good at telling. Here's
Mm.
the impact, because if we don't do it, we're going to run out of money in 10 years, and everyone is going to be impacted, right? And I think sometimes our politicians don't do a good job in doing that. But as you said,
You
it's
talk,
politics being played.
and when you say not a good job of doing it, you're talking about communicating.
Yes, it's telling, hey, here's why we have to do this.
Yeah.
It's just like, you have a budget for your house, right? Everyone has a budget that you live, right? If your kids want something and you can't afford it, you're going to tell them, look, if I give you that, guess what? We can't pay the light bill. And if we can't pay the light bill, we're all going to sit here in dark. So I have to manage and say, I can't buy you that X because I got to go pay the light bill. Now, if I don't pay the light bill and buy you this, guess what? We're all going to sit here in the dark, right? And I think our politicians sometimes did really do a good job at telling stories. But in this case, who knows? But the question, fundamental piece, Sylbourne, is in any policy, is it the right policy for the country? And I think if the answer is yes, everyone should be behind it and say, yes, it's the right policy.
And it should be sold to them as well. It should be sold to them. And then a big question then is, who will be the effective voice that sells that policy where they can trust?
Exactly.
Because they'll say, if the current administration says it, I don't want to hear it, even though it's good for you. And therefore, as you rightly say, who is going to bell the cat to say this is actually good, and here are the reasons why? I heard the I think there's someone said from the JLP was saying that they have been bad in not selling their policies, and I said to the person, is it selling your policies? Because if you're selling your policies shouldn't be sold. People should feel.
Yes, exactly.
People should be feeling your policies.
Exactly. And it seems like the current administration is actually listening to you, because, Clinton is a master of it. That personal touch.
Yeah.
Andrew had that lady that got a legal plot of land, and then he came out and held her and said, look, I'm going to help you build a house on this lot. Right? It makes it personal and make it impactful. So,
well, depending on what you're listening to, is that me? Sorry.
No, it was you.
Yeah. Depending on what you're listening to, they'll say that they were used. The guy for the Radam was used, and so therefore, listen, you can't win. No matter what, you can't win. The key, and I believe we're going to wrap up. I think the key thing what come out of this is, out of policies and out of things for government, the key question is it good for the nation? Will the opposition agree? Will the government will agree? Is it good for the nation? How can that be communicated across?
Exactly. And I would say, bet on Jamaica. Keep putting your bet on Jamaica. I do believe that regardless of the issues that Jamaica face, it's moving in a direction that I think will be positive. Obviously, there are things that needs to change, but we're building on those stepping stones. And we're building on that baseline. And I do believe that hopefully 10 years from now, 5 years from now, Jamaica is the beacon, because I think it can. We have great institutions. You and I are, testament of those great institutions. Look at us right here, Sylbourne. From Ocherius, from Clarendon, there's probably not a soul that have heard of Edwin Allen. If you go in the city of London and say Edwin Allen or York Castle, nobody knows.
Well, you say Ocherius, they know though.
Yeah, they know. But look at the impact that we're able to make in our respective vocation. And it's a testament, because I would say without Jamaica, there's no me.
Exactly.
Because everything that I learn there. And I think these are the positive things that we should continue to showcase.
Yeah. And you're and you're right about that, because I always say, and you'll see me at times when I do my dance. I always say straight out of Ochi,
Mhm.
because for me that is my base, straight out of Ochi. And my wife funeral wedding was birthday was yesterday, and I said my wife straight out of Ochi as well. We're all from Ocherius, and the
Yeah.
kids now they're from Ocherius, even though they're born here.
Yeah. If you look at my bio, and you look at my bio, um, my bio says a proud Jamaican.
Yes,
Right. My bio says, well, in my entire company, when they read my bio, there's a piece of it says O'Neill is a very proud Jamaican.
yes. And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we're proud Jamaicans, and as the song says, positive Jamaica moving forward. And we decided to go against the grain of trying to find the problems, but looking at the solutions and looking at the way forward. And the key thing that came through today, which O'Neill said, was is the policy good for Jamaica? And if anyone can agree with that, and everyone can agree with that, rally around it. What the song say? Rally around the
Right,
right,
left,
right,
right
rally
around the
around
right.
the red, rally around the red, the gold, black and green.
Yeah,
Rally
exactly.
around the flag, rally around the flag.
Exactly. Yeah. Because
Rally around
at the ultimate of it, guess what?
yeah,
Regardless of what your station in life, we're
yes,
all Jamaicans.
yes. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care whatever country you're from or where you're born, you're all Jamaicans. That's what he said, O'Neill.
Of course, exactly.
All right. Well, listen, I think we're good for tonight, isn't it?
All right, buddy.
Yeah. O'Neill, just
Oh, by the way, you
yeah,
just we didn't talk about this, but
yeah.
we moved daylight saving time. So
Yes.
so that's why I said, because it used to be 5.
Ah, yes. Okay. So you guys made a move. Well,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
guys,
yeah. We add an hour.
I think the UK did the UK. No, we
No,
have
the UK is not there yet. I think you guys are soon. Hold on. Let me see when you guys are doing it.
so your time now is so my flyer there is I wonder if that's okay.
You fire probably wrong.
Well, yeah, because the flyer has been before. It hasn't.
Yes. Hold
But
on.
what
I'll
about
tell you.
Jamaica? What about Jamaica? What time
No,
is
Jamaica. I think we're hour. So no. So you're yeah. So I think you're March 26th. So March 26th, we're gonna go back to 5 o'clock. So I think your March 26th is when you change your clocks.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. I get what you're
Yep.
saying.
March 26th is when you change your time. So we changed hours last week. You're changing March 26th.
Okay. We'll have to keep that. Well, thank you, Max, for joining. For those on Instagram, I want to thank you so much for that as well, and for those on YouTube and those on
Yeah.
Facebook.
So Michelle, we're hour ahead of Jamaica. So
Yeah,
we'll get on parity on the 26th. So we'll be back at 5 p.m. Eastern time on the 26th. But for the next couple of weeks, it's gonna be 6 p.m. Eastern time.
okay. And you are not Central. You're Eastern, or you're Central.
Yeah, I'm Eastern time.
You're
So
Eastern.
right now it's 7:19 p.m.
Yes.
Cool.
All right.
All
O'Neill,
right, man.
peace out, man.
Peace
God
out.
bless you.
All
Cheers.
right. Cheers.
See you.
All right.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining. And we say we're gonna go a bit quick today, a long day, and very good conversation. And I think it is very good. One of the most important thing is if the policy is good, sell it. Okay. Have a good night and God bless you. And peace out to those on YouTube as well. And for the small amount which came on TikTok as well, I want to thank you so much. And peace out and bye-bye.
Let's go!